You're tuned to Radio Kidnappers, the voice of Hawke's Bay. This is the wonderful world of Wardini books, and it's our pleasure to have in the studio the magnificent.
Oh,
You were fabulous last
Keep
week. Now you're
going.
magnificent. Well, Lou from Wardini Books in Havelock North. How you going, Lou?
you're really magnificent, thank
Yes.
you, Ken. Yeah.
Now, on this atrocious day, because as we record this program, it's very miserable outside, we've got 4 great books to talk about.
We do, yeah.
Little Hector and the Big Blue Whale.
So this is a beautiful little picture book by Ruth Paul, New Zealand author, and it is about little Hector, who is little Hector's dolphin. And what it does is puts into very simple terms, in the form of a little story of a brave little dolphin, what dangers there are for Hector's dolphins, because they're so desperately
Yes.
endangered. So little Hector is totally fed up because he's always called Happy Little Hector, and it's always about how little he is. But he's too small to go anywhere, and he's smaller than Stingray and shorter than Seal, and squitty compared to his bottlenose cousins. So don't go out past this point. Watch out for boats. Don't trust orcas. Stay safe. And so he's like, I'm totally fed up with all this shenanigans, and I am going out into
Time
the
to leave
big
home.
wide ocean. And so the big grey dolphins are having an absolute ball, and he thinks, right, I'm going out with them, but they're too fast for him because they're big and they don't notice he's there, and they speed off, and then he's left sort of way out of his depth, quite literally. So the first thing which illustrates the danger of the fishing boats and things to little Hector's dolphins is there's a boat propeller and it nearly gets him. And then there's an orca. And he says, I'm related to you. Please don't eat me. But, orcas are like, oh, just in time for dinner.
Yeah.
Marvellous. But, fortunately, a benevolent sea creature, a massive blue whale, says, what's a tiddler like you doing in the deep blue sea? I'm not going to eat you. I eat things far smaller than you. And so guides him back home. And I don't know if big blue whales would do that, but potentially they could. And so he goes home and realises that that's where he's supposed to be. And then at the back, it tells you how to identify Hector's dolphin. Unless we take steps to protect them, they may become extinct in our lifetime. And I just think it's a wonderful wee book.
Great drawings.
Beautiful. So Ruth Paul does it all. She's
Wow.
a writer and an illustrator.
What a talent.
Yes.
And a good book with a moral.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't
Let's
beat a good
sort
moral,
that
can you?
out. Wow, it's not even a moral. It's just like, don't let them die.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. We want to have them around for many, many moons to come.
I reckon.
The Peski Kids is our next book.
Yes, this is by R.A. Spratt, and it's subtitled, so it's book 1 in what I'm hoping is going to be a long series, The Mystery of the Squashed Cockroach. And I started to read this, quite a jolly cover, eh?
Yes,
so
it
it's
is.
all, cartoony and bright and all this kind of thing. And I read the prologue, and the prologue has, let me find out her name. It deals with Dr. Banfield. So she's a dowdy middle-aged lady. That's how she's described. She's got a tweedy suit and all that kind of thing, and she never gets stopped at the airport security. On this occasion, though, she does by a man in a very cheap grey suit. It's noted that it's polyester
Yes.
or something. And they ask her to unpack a bag, and they find a big bone in it. And she says, well, I'm a paleontologist, and it's the ulnar of a stegosaurus, and, what could you possibly want with that? And they start whopping it. And she's like, don't break it. It's priceless or whatever. And they break it, and there's a USB drive inside the bone.
Look at that.
And they say, you're under arrest. And she says, no, I'm not. And she seriously kicks some ass at that point. She just goes, the little old lady in the tweed suit goes nuts. So she's obviously got something to protect. Anyway, they do arrest her. And then that's the prologue. And then the next bit is the Peski kids, who are siblings, and they're scrapping as it starts. So they're Joe, Finn, and April Peski. And they are going to solve the mystery of the cockroach catastrophe that's rocking their new hometown. They've got a beautiful sociopathic neighbour next door, and they've got Pumpkin, the world's worst trained dog. They obviously haven't met my dog. So that's obviously going to link in with Dr.
Yes.
Banfield. So R.A. Spratt's also written Friday Barnes and Nanny Piggins, and I've seen her perform in real life. She's an extremely funny woman, and she's just written brilliant stuff. So that would be for kids of about 8 and up.
And it's a funny book.
Yeah, it's good.
Funny ha-ha.
Fabulous. Funny ha-ha.
You're listening to Radio Kidnappers, the voice of Hawke's Bay. This is the wonderful world of Wardini Books. We've got Lou in, and we're reviewing another 4 great books which are available at both stores, Wardini in Havelock North and Wardini in Napier. And that F word, we all know what that word is, don't we?
What is it, Ken?
It's fat.
Is it?
Food.
Okay, this one's feminist.
Oh, is it really?
In this case today. So that F word, Growing Up Feminist in Aotearoa, and it is by Lizzie Marvelly. And I did not know much about Lizzie Marvelly before I read this book.
I just knew she was she's a columnist or a political person, is she? Or?
She's a columnist,
Yes.
and she's got a blog called Villainess, which is a feminist blog, and she was a singer. She was kind of like a
Really?
Hayley Westenra style character. She got international record deals as a quite very young woman. She was still at school. But now writes for the Herald, I think.
That's
so
right,
she's
she
a
does too,
columnist.
yes.
And this book, so I didn't have any expectations really. I just thought, that looks interesting, and I picked it up. And what she's doing is she is presenting two young women in Aotearoa really sort of a manifesto for how you're going to negotiate this modern world and what you need to say no to. And there are a great many things that are foisted upon us that we need to say no to. So just, it was one of those books that I underlined things and I dog-eared pages. And the first thing that I thought was, you could have a really good discussion about this. Radical though it may seem, says Lizzie, femininity and masculinity don't actually exist. They are made-up ideas that place one gender in the dominant role and one in the submissive.
I'd go along with that.
Yes. Oh, definitely. But I think it's one of those things that you think, hang on a minute. But when you realise she's not actually talking about I'm a woman, you're a man, and we are physically different. It's like there is no difference in the rights that should be accorded to us and that I should dominate you or you should dominate me just because of gender.
Of course.
Yeah, and it's all sorts of brilliant ideas like that, and lots of different chapters on things like pornography and the things that young men are watching because they have such access to it means that they're not looking at normal stuff.
No.
And girls are ending up doing things that is not
normal.
Normal.
No. And it's a funny thing that you should mention that because no, it's actually one of the hardest words to say.
Is this a joke?
No, it's not. No. I was talking to someone the other day, like we have a program with the Women's Refuge, and we think it's so easy to say, look, just say no. It's very hard to just say no.
Oh, and there is actually, she cites a rape case in this book where a defence lawyer was questioning the victim and said to the victim, when you said no, what did you mean by that?
Go ask yourself.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, a very important book.
Very important book. And of course, we say it's about feminism, but men would equally get a lot out of that book.
I think so, definitely.
Should be a required reading almost.
For some of the boys' colleges.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
This is how it is. We're all people, thank you.
And the last book we're going to talk about today is A Warlight.
Yes. So this is, I should have looked up how you pronounce it because I always get it wrong. So it's the man that wrote The English Patient. So it's Michael Ondaatje.
That's him.
That's him. So Warlight. And this is a book-along lister. And I'm trying to eat through as many of the book-along lists as I can so I can predict the shortlist and have fun with that. So Warlight is set mostly in London. It's in England anyway, just after the Second World War. And two young people are living with their mother and father, and they're kind of, rubbing along as you do after the war. And then their parents sit them down and say, both got to go away for a year. We're going to Singapore for a year. And the kids are like, what? What's going to happen to us? Well, we've got one of our friends to look after you. And this is a man that they vaguely met a few times, and they've dubbed him the Moth. They call him the Moth because he's got that sort of flittery, quiet character, and they see him as sort of shady and not quite real to them. So he moves into the home and packs them off to school every day and all this kind of thing, and they're left reeling. But they form a sort of relationship with him. But he has all sorts of weird and wonderful people coming through the house all the time, which makes them feel a bit strange because it's their home, not his. Oh, and another one of these characters is called the Darter. This is the nickname they've given him because he's a little bit war and he's basically smuggling greyhounds from overseas and doing all sorts of shady stuff. Yeah. But our protagonist the young man gets quite involved with the Darter and learns so much from him and actually ends up looking up to him. But then it's unravelling what the heck's gone on with the parents, and really it's about after the Second World War, the war just didn't stop and everything was tidy. There was still people of concern to the British government everywhere. So it's sort of shady British intelligence that's going on there.
Sounds great. And out of 10, what's that book worth?
It's got to be. What would it be? But then I've just read one that I'll review next week. Oh, dear. I'll give it a...
Yourself, talk to same time, same place next time.
Thank you, Ken.